Hey there, this is Brad with Copper Pools. Today I'm going to talk about maintaining and cleaning your electrode chamber from your copper oxygen sanitation system. You're going to need a few items for this: a bucket to put your mixture in, along with the acid to dilute with water, and of course a pipe wrench to take your electrode chamber off of your return line, and then a paper towel to clean the electrode connectors before we return it back to its service. So the manufacturer recommends a 5-to-1 ratio of water to acid. We're going to use this bucket for that. The other thing I have in here is I have a little spare piece of plumbing pipe for basically propping the electrode chamber up so that when it starts, as you'll see, bubbling and everything and getting rid of all that scale on there, it's going really upward and out of that chamber instead of just sitting there and resting in that chamber. And we'll show you a video of that. So the next step up, we're going to remove that electrode chamber. We're going to make our batch of acid and water, and we're going to submerge that in there. All right, so the water is off, and we are going to take this electrode chamber off of the plumbing return line for the pool. First thing we're disconnecting are the electrode conductors, the power conductors. We're also going to take this light indicator off. That's all it is a light indicator that lets you know current is going to the copper side. We're going to take that off. There's no need to wash that in the system. We're going to get this bad boy off of here using this pipe wrench. We'll use the same tool to tighten it. There we go. And that's it for taking it off. Okay, next up we're going to make our mixture of 5 parts water to 1 part acid. I am not super precise with this. I fill this up with pool water to a level that I think is appropriate, and then I pour the acid in there to when I start to see it look a little smoky. Now the other part of this that I do like to do is to pour this mixture actually back in the pool. In other words, I do this on a maintenance day when I'm going to be adding acid to the pool anyway. So on my day of maintenance is when I do this. The EcoSmart manual recommends you do this about every 90 days to 6 months. I do it every 90 days because the scale on the copper electrodes and the titanium electrodes might actually get in the way of producing what we want to produce. So there is the chamber as we see it today, and you can see both sides of that as we're going to put this in here. And like I said earlier, I used a little support tool to sort of give it a bit of a slope. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put my electrode chamber in there. I'll turn it upright so we can see it if it starts bubbling. I'm going to go wash my hands in the pool. And now we're going to let that thing soak for about 10 to 15 minutes per the manual. You can see it already starting to bubble. That bubbling means that it's removing some scale off the surface plates that you see in there. So not going to really touch it, just going to let it descale, and then you're going to see me dump that back in the pool and use that mixture basically to help me manage the pH, because I'm using the EcoSmart turbo system, and the turbo system requires one to use muriatic acid to get the pH to stay between 6.8 and 7.2. If you have the programmable system where you're putting CO2, you could still use this and dump this into the pool. It's not going to really do a lot of damage because I've only put about a pint worth of acid in there, and that the pool, especially if you have like this one, a 15,000 gallon pool, it'll use that acid to bump down the pH, but that pH is going to rise back up because the acid winds up getting really consumed by the water. So we're going to let that soak, and we'll get back to this. Okay, so we've waited the approximately 10 to 15 minutes necessary for the solution of acid and water to descale and clean our electrode chamber. So we're going to take this thing out. And what it tells us to do is to clean it. So we're going to just use a little bit of water here and just clean it out. And the next thing it tells us to do is to dry off these electrodes where the power conductors connect, which we'll do in a moment. But what I want to show you while I have you in this angle, these are the copper electrodes, and you can see they're a little bit worn down, but to give you a perspective, this is what they originally looked like. So that was the original dimension of the bar, and that's what it's worn down to. It's going to wear down over time, but where does that copper go? Obviously it goes into your pool as your microbicide. So that is a brand new copper bar. About every 3 to 5 years we wind up replacing that. Ultimately it's going to get down to about that size right there. That's ultimately what it's going to shrink down to, and gives you a good perspective of when to replace versus what new looks like. Now on the other side of this chamber we have the titanium electrodes. These are coated with platinum and iridium, and you try to look at those and see how they look. And in perspective, this is one that I have taken out of a system, and what you're really looking for is that it's mostly black, and that's what you see here. It's mostly black. A little bit of white gray over here, but it's mostly black on that base. That looks pretty good, and that's the back side of it. But for the front side of it, mostly black. So this one actually is still a good one. I did scratch off a little bit of the coating by accident when I was showing it off as a demo unit, but that gives you a good perspective. Now the other thing that EcoSmart asks you to do when you're doing this quarterly maintenance is look at your copper electrodes and see if you're seeing any kind of uneven wear on them. For example, one might be wearing down faster than the other. If that's true, then pay attention to where you took the red and the green wire off and swap them. Put the red on the opposite side and the green on the opposite side. And what's happening with the EcoSmart controller is it's actually putting a current through here, positive on this side, negative on this side, and then it flips it. You know, positive on this side, negative on this side, and it rotates that back and forth. So what they're saying is if you see too much wear and tear on one, it's degrading faster, then flip those cables and you will be able to try to manage that such that you're not wiping out one bar and the other one is larger. All right, so the next step after this is we're going to dry off these ports where we connect the power conductors. We want those nice and dry. So we're going to do that on the one side, flip it over, and do that on the other side. So that we have a good dry connection. All right, now the next step is we're going to go reinstall this. Okay, here we are back at the return line to the pool. We have our EcoSmart chamber all cleaned with our quarterly maintenance. We're going to pay attention to the flow of water marker. It says to pool. It flows from copper to titanium is another way to look at it. We're going to slide this back into place and get these threaded couplers back on. I always find it easier to tighten one of them, and then you can kind of, that sort of is the anchor. Then you're only really dealing with one other side. And tightening those, and then we're going to use our trusty pipe wrench. We're not going to turn very much here. We just want to give it a little bit of a quarter of a turn. We'll be able to turn the water on and test it to make sure that we have no leaks at those joints, and if we do, we will just tighten that spot. The other thing that I did, by the way, was I I wiped that rubber gasket. There's a rubber gasket at each end. I wiped that with that cloth that I didn't put on camera, but with that paper towel I wiped that, so those are nice and clean. And of course lubricate with a little bit of water when you go to do this so that it, there we go. So now we're going to connect our leads. The first thing I will do is, I'll hold off on that for a moment because I'm going to put that over the top. Remember, green and red go to the copper side, black and white, your traditional black and white, go to the titanium side. If we had uneven wear, we will swap these two, but we have not had uneven wear, so we're going to put these right back where they were. Our trusty EcoSmart system is working as expected. Black and white. And then I just go over the top of this thing just to kind of keep it all nice and neat. Again, that is purely a visual light indicator to know current is applied to the copper side of this electrode chamber. That's it. We're going to turn the water back on. And that's all it took. Just, again, maybe 5 minutes worth of prep, 10 to 15 minutes in the acid bath, and about maybe 5 minutes to clean it up and put it back into place.